All right, YouTube, we're back at it again. Labor Day is just about over, and Auburn is getting prepared for the Tulane Green Wave, which is an old rival of Auburn from way back in the day. World War II days, these guys were buddies in the Southern Intercollegiate Athletic Conference. We'll be taking on Auburn this coming Saturday at 6:30 Central Time, 7:30 Eastern Time on ESPN2. Once again, it's Kennard Vernon Stewart here for the podcast, talking a little bit really quickly about Auburn football as we very, very vaguely recap the Oregon game from this particular weekend, which I was very intrigued by that particular game. Auburn pulling off the victory 27-21 in very unlikely fashion. We're going to talk about a few things. Let's go ahead and like this video, comment, and subscribe to the channel. And as always, it's great to be an Auburn Tiger, War Eagle. Now, there's some ghosts of the past for Auburn that really came back to roost in this particular Oregon game. And fortunately, it didn't turn out to be costly. Number one is the punt coverage. A couple of things that I saw here with the punt coverage. One, not a lot of discipline in lane coverage. When you run down the field for a punt, you have to maintain your lane. And a lot of these guys didn't do it. And it proved to be almost costly. As a matter of fact, there was one where the returner almost ran it all the way back. It was kind of similar to the kick six where you had all fat guys on the one side of the field, and he almost ran it back. Luckily, he was run down, and on the ensuing play, similar to the Washington game, Justin Herbert fumbles, and Big Cat Bryant almost runs it back. That was a game-changing play. As a matter of fact, that was actually similar to Nick Fairley's play against Alabama, where I can't think of the quarterback's name right offhand, but it was a play middle to late second quarter where Nick Fairley forced a fumble and then he crawled around to recover the fumble, and that changed the trajectory of that particular football game. This game was kind of like a whole bunch of different Auburn games all in one. I could see the Alabama game from 2010. I could see the Florida State game from 2013. I could see the LSU game from 2017, all in one game, which creates a lot of anxiety. But we're Auburn people, so we're used to these levels of anxiety. But back to the kick coverage thing. Okay, first of all, the lanes weren't covered properly. And second, this is a coaching tip from the punt team. I think that the punter needs to put a little bit more air on the ball or kind of delay the timing of his kick, because what's happening is, and you'll see in this little diagram, when the punt returner catches the ball, he's dead in the center of the field. He's not having to change his trajectory at all on this particular punt, and he can survey the field, and he can already see that Auburn is out of position. But the punter did not do Auburn any favors by not having any air under the ball. So he basically outkicks his coverage, and they're already out of position. And at a certain point, when you're a punt team, you have to be able to break down at a certain point to be able to give yourself leverage to make a play. They never had a chance. So you have two storms going on. First of all, the punter is out kicking the coverage. And two, the actual coverage team is really not showing discipline in guarding their lanes. That's why you've seen this for the last couple of years. And I really think Gus Malzahn and his staff coming into the Tulane game, they absolutely have to fix this, because there are a lot of dynamic kick returners in the SEC that will really flip the field on Auburn. And as good as Auburn's defense is, only allowing 21 points in this particular game, probably should allow way more based on field position and based on some of the mistakes that were made. This could be very dangerous for the Auburn Tigers down the stretch. Another thing we have to refer back to is play calling, just play calling methods. One thing I'm really wary about Gus Malzahn is between the 20s, from 20 to 20, he's one of the best play callers in the world. Where it gets real sketchy, and what I want Gus Malzahn to work on for the next couple of weeks is his play calling, not necessarily at the, say, 16-yard line and back to the 20. Really need to work on a lot more high percentage play calls between, say, the 15 to 12 to 10 on into the end zone. And especially as you get closer to the end zone. I think he calls a lot of low percentage plays down there. Now, we talk about the play that he blamed himself for. It wasn't that play that was the problem. It was the second play that was the problem, where Bo Nix wound up coughing the ball up, almost costing a turnover. So these types of things, you want to put your players in the best position to be successful, and on first down, you have to make the most out of that play. I think you got to do some more straight ahead stuff. Your offensive line is very physical. Now, that's one of the offensive line's strength, is that they really do a good job of downhill blocking. I think you just got to trust the guys you got. You got to go ahead and start pounding the football. Don't worry about 2018. You have a different team this year. And if things get real tricky, just do a wildcat situation with Joey Gatewood and get the physicality going. Because now they have to account for Joey Gatewood. They have to account for Boobie Whitlow, so forth and so on. Do yourself a favor. If you're Gus, call more high percentage plays, especially on first down. Don't get down in the down and distance deep in the red zone, because I'm telling you guys, 3rd and 7 or 3rd and 5 or 7 or more, I mean, it makes your play calling very predictable. Just like how Gus Malzahn does a great job between the 20s and keeping the down and distance at bay, he's got to do that in the red zone. Because how much better would it have been 3rd and 2 in the red zone versus 3rd and 4 or 3rd and 7, to where you have to basically pass the football? And with the very, very talented secondary that Oregon had, I mean, they're licking their chops on this. I mean, all bets are off. You're not scoring on us 3rd and 7 down in the red zone. It's just not happening. You're going to kick a field goal, and we're going to get this thing moving once again. Another thing that's plaguing Auburn Tigers, come on, we got to tighten up. What's plaguing Auburn are the penalties. We talked about this already. Penalties have to be kept at bay. Okay? Crucial penalties. There was one. There was a jump off sides where, Bo Nix was trying to get a rhythm going, and Prince Wanagu jumps offside. This was early in the first quarter, I think on the first drive. Those are momentum killers, okay? That's something that they definitely have to work on when you talk about facing a team like Tulane, who's just coming off a 42-14 win over FIU. Very, very respectable win. Tulane also, we're going to talk about this in a video as we start to preview Tulane here in the next couple of days. They have a very good defensive line. I showcased that in a video that I did a couple of months ago. Not quite as good as what Oregon presented, which also caused some anxiety for Auburn, because what happened was, if you really paid close attention to that game, they were switching personnel all over the place. They called their plays based on what they saw the tendencies of Andy Avalos from Boise State. But here's the difference. When you come to a team like Oregon, you have access to a lot more talent. You have a lot more toys to play with, and you can get a little bit more creative, and that's exactly what they did. Troy Dye, number 35, typically a middle linebacker, but he's very fast. What they would do, they would line him at that jack linebacker position, and he caused a lot of anxiety for Bo Nix, because his first step is lethal. Nobody can block him. He's a blocking mismatch off top. Also, what they did was, I did a video on Jordan Scott. Jordan Scott is the nose tackle, number 34. They lined him up instead of at nose tackle. They switched him down the line of scrimmage to create mismatches and plug holes. That's why Auburn found it difficult to run the football, because that's not something that they were prepared for. They were prepared for Jordan Scott over center, challenging Caleb Kim. But he was just down the sideline. And they also mixed some things up with Kayvon Thibodeau, who is actually going to be a very, very good defensive end for the Oregon Ducks. So hats off to Oregon for being very creative with their play calling and really confusing the Auburn Tigers, especially in the first half. Auburn started to kind of reel it in and get a little bit more physical, start to attack head on, and start to move the football with Boobie Whitlow. And Boobie Whitlow actually did some creative things on his own because, hey, that defensive line, I told you guys in a video before that these dudes, the guys were tough, okay? And, you know, a lot of folks are like, you know, Oregon was absolutely not overrated. This was a very good football team, and Auburn was very fortunate to have won this particular football game. Now, going to the next couple of weeks, you talk about Tulane, Kent State. I would rather face a Kent State, a Tulane, having beaten a very, very viable opponent in Oregon. It's going to be very tough for Oregon to win out because they have so many tough Pac-12 games on the road. But this team is very equipped to do so. Andy Avalos also mentioned about the scholarship players. That started to really take a toll in the middle of the third quarter because you notice they started to fatigue. Auburn, obviously having the more depth, started to impose their will against Oregon late in that football game. And that was a good move by Gus Malzahn to get a little bit more physical, start pounding the football to give his team a little bit more opportunity and also take a little bit of pressure off of true freshman quarterback Bo Nix, who, because of how this game turned out, it wasn't pretty. It wasn't the, most magnificent first game performance by a true freshman quarterback. But you got to remember, you're facing one of the more talented defenses up and coming in the country. Now, statistically, didn't show it last year, but this year you could see the improvements in Oregon's defense, and they really did a good job of challenging Bo Nix and putting Bo Nix in positions to make very, very uncomfortable decisions. The most frightening one, and Bo Nix really, really executed this, was 4th down and 3. When he ran the football, he was surrounded by white jerseys, but he found a way to make it happen. Those are those things that, even though Bo Nix didn't have a perfect game, those are those things that develop the confidence of a quarterback. Because although he's a relatively humble guy, in the back of your mind, you're thinking, damn, man, I did that against Oregon. The number 17, number 11 team in the country, my first game out. I scored the winning touchdown in the first game out. That starts to develop in your subconscious as a quarterback. That gives you the confidence to get out there and work a little bit harder, to grind a little bit harder because you have something to stand on. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't, the best case scenario, but you came out on top. Once again, it's Kennard Vernon Stewart here for the podcast talking Auburn football like a lot of folks will not. Go ahead and subscribe to this channel, Vernon Speaks Sports Auburn. It's always great to be an Auburn Tiger here on this channel. And as always and forever, I believe in Auburn and love it. War Eagle.